I've got some pretty fond memories of the PlayStation era Final Fantasy games. I really love the psychology behind Final Fantasy VII's story. I loved all of the retro and callbacks of Final Fantasy IX, and when it comes to Final Fantasy VIII, I wouldn't really call this a fond memory, but I kinda got the short end of the stick with the used copy I bought. I would always get to disc 3 where you board Lunatic Pandora and the game would always freeze during that animation. I never actually was able to finish the game until it came to handhelds through the PSP, but now it's returned to handhelds with some new features, so I was really excited in diving in and seeing what this new version looked like. With plenty of ups and downs, here is my review of Final Fantasy VIII Remastered for the Nintendo Switch. The story of VIII is about Squall Leonhardt, a loner raised in the military school of Balam Garden, training to become a Seed, part of the Garden's elite military force. But things go a little wonky when he goes on his first mission with a sorceress coming into power, setting her sights and pretty much declaring war on Garden and the Seeds themselves. Squall and his allies must then defend their home and retaliate by going on a mission to take down the sorceress once and for all. Now, the story of Final Fantasy VIII I'm pretty conflicted on. All of the lore and the plot behind the sorceress and the gardens is pretty interesting, and I really enjoyed how those plot points evolve, especially towards the end of the game. But there were a few story elements, one very important to the backstory of all the characters, that really just don't make a lot of sense and come out of nowhere. When it comes to gameplay, Final Fantasy VIII Remastered is a turn-based RPG. First of all, let's talk about the difference between Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy VIII Remastered, which basically just boils down to 3 cheats that have been added to the game. You can trigger these cheats with the analog stick button presses, and they allow you to do 3 things. The first cheat lets you triple the speed of gameplay, the second turns off random encounters, and the third is a battle booster that will automatically refill everyone's HP gauges and enable limit breaks every turn. These are all very convenient, especially the speed cheat. Like in Final Fantasy IX, most of the game's timers for the timing-based events do not change with the triple speed cheat on. When it comes to progression, you have pretty typical RPG story-driven stuff here. You've got a huge world map for you to explore, but for the first third of the game, the story's going to be pushing you towards specific locations, keeping you locked to certain continents or certain parts of the world map until the game finally gives you a vehicle that you can navigate the ocean with in Disc 2. Now, as far as gameplay systems are concerned, Final Fantasy VIII is known for being unique because of the draw command, guardian forces or summon magic, and junctioning. Everyone can use magic and there is no MP or magic point system. Instead, spells are a resource that you can collect from enemies. The draw command allows you to target an enemy and see what spells they have, and then you can either cast them on the spot or stock them, which allows you to steal and keep them for yourself. This is the first really exploitable part of this game's systems. If you come across an enemy with a really high tier spell, you can have everybody just keep drawing from them until everybody has 100 copies of that spell. It's also where some of the hidden and missable content is. A lot of bosses will have high tier spells, but they'll also have summon magic that you can steal from them. Now technically, if you miss these guardian forces, you can get them all again in the final dungeon. But a lot of these early access Guardian Forces are a lot more useful in the early game than the late game. And speaking of Guardian Forces, let's talk about Final Fantasy VIII's Summon Magic. Guardian Forces, or GFs, can be equipped to party members, but they're pretty much party members in and of themselves. They have their own stats like HP gauges, and they level up with the party as they earn experience and AP, not only increasing their own stats, but also learning abilities that they can give either to themselves or the party members they're equipped to. These abilities can range from changing a character command to another, or giving them the ability to junction magic to one of their stats. And that brings us to the junction system, one of the things that confused a lot of people back in the 90s. Junction is basically just another word for equip. When you have a junction ability, you're able to take any spell that your character has stock of and equip it to that stat to increase it further than level ups do. Every spell also has a stat that it's best at. If you want to junction something to your HP to give you a huge boost, using an attack spell like fire or water is going to have much less of an effect than if you use a healing spell like cure or life. This also gets a little bit more in depth when you get to status attack and elemental attack. This allows you to give your attack a certain element like fire, lightning, or water, or adding a status ailment to your attack like poison or even death. Now all these systems come together and give you a lot of different things that you can do when you're fighting enemies. It also comes together pretty nicely in terms of content and length. If you play through Final Fantasy VIII without using any of the cheats, it'll probably take you at least 50 hours to reach the end of the game, depending on how much side content you want to do. And using both of those cheats, you might be able to complete the entire game in about 20 to 25 hours. And now let's get into presentation. Graphically, the 3D models of the characters, guardian forces, and enemies look great. Tons of detail, polishing, and upscaling done here, and they really look nice. Everything else in the game doesn't. The environments and backdrops look very blurry, all of the FMV cutscenes have a lot of tearing and jaggies in them, and honestly all around it looks like they improved the 3D models and nothing else. And that's also present when you look at the game's resolution and screen modes. It's stuck to a 4:3 ratio, and unlike Final Fantasy VII and IX, Final Fantasy VIII has borders on the left, right, up, and down. And when it comes to music and sound, there's also a bit of an issue here. One of the music tracks, The Landing, that plays during the Dalit mission, sounds like a MIDI file on the Switch version. In the PS4 version and other versions of Final Fantasy VIII, the track sounds like this. Whereas in the Switch version, it sounds like this. Thankfully, performance is pretty great, so let's go right into battery life. On the original model, this game has a battery range of 3 hours and 56 minutes on high settings, up to 5 hours and 28 minutes on low settings. And on the Redbox or V2 model, it has a battery range of 6 hours and 20 minutes on high settings, up to 8 hours and 10 minutes on low settings. Now in conclusion, Final Fantasy VIII remains a very unique and different part of the series. While this new version brings every bit of that uniqueness back to handhelds along with some really convenient cheats to use, it feels like an unoptimized remaster with music issues, only part of the visuals being polished and improved, and us getting an even smaller resolution with more borders than the other games like this that are on the Switch. Now don't get me wrong, it's still a fun and great game, but this version has a lot of flaws to it. Reviews to Go rates Final Fantasy VIII Remastered for the Nintendo Switch a 6.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thanks for watching and have a great day.